In this lesson, we will learn how to control time. This ability is just as important as knowing about 3D space because an animation is moving an object through space and time. In computer animation, time is defined in frames. So how many frames are in 1 second? Well, two common settings are 24 frames per second, also called FPS, and 30 frames per second. For this training, we'll be using 30 frames per second. This is called the frame rate. Now, depending on what medium the animation is for, say TV versus cinema, you might need to change the frame rate. And make sure you set the frame rate before animating, because it is a headache to change after you start animating. Now that we know the frame rate, we can begin moving through time using a panel called the time slider. On the time slider is a marker that you can use to set the current time or frame. The frames are represented by tick marks and numbers on the time slider. Underneath the time slider is something called the range slider. Using this, we can limit the number of frames visible in our time slider, thus focusing on only a small portion of the animation. Another way to watch our animation is by dragging the marker across the time slider. This is called scrubbing, and it's a good way to get a feel of how our animation is looking. The only thing is, it's difficult to see what the animation will look like because the time moves just as fast as the marker moves, not at the frame rate that we specified. Similar to a remote control, we can simply press the play button to tell our computer to play our animation back. This is found in the Playback Controls panel. This panel can do many things beyond a regular remote, such as play the animation backwards or move one frame at a time, as well as go to the beginning or end of the time slider. But even using this panel is not a foolproof way of previewing our animation at the right frame rate. Depending on how complex the animation is, the computer still might play the animation back at the wrong speed. Fortunately, there is a third option for watching your animation, and that's to make a preview. Now this tells the computer to evaluate every frame, create an image for it, and then output that as a video which plays at the correct frame rate. In this lesson, we learned about frame rate, the time slider, the range slider, and previewing. Now in the next lesson, we'll take a look at keyframing.